the voice of Alabama politics, with your host, Bill Brett. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Coming to you from the Lee County Courthouse on day 12 of the Mike Hubbard Criminal Trial. I'm Bill Brett.
And I'm Susan Britt.
Coming to you for the voice of Alabama politics and Alabama political reporter. Susan, we heard closing arguments from the prosecution and the defense today. We'll hear closing arguments again tomorrow from the defense and the prosecution. And this case could go to the jury by lunch.
It could, and it looks like we may even be able to get a verdict back tomorrow. Not sure, but it's possible.
It was a compelling day because of the closing arguments. But before we get to that, we'll start off with the day began with Matt Hart cross-examining Speaker Hubbard about a proffer that he gave in March of 2014 in which he tried to convince the state that he had done nothing wrong. They showed that he had changed some of his testimony, some of it ever so slightly, but had changed it.
He had changed it in 3 different instances. For one, when talking about the patent, he said in that proffer that he himself was the one that made all those calls. He never mentions Josh Blades. As far as the money that went through Tim Howell and on to Auburn Network, he told them in March 2014 that had no commission taken out of it, that they did it that way just simply so that the ALGOP could get more bang for their buck. They could get that extra 15% worth of product from them.
On the stand, Mike Hubbard said they took 10%, Tim Howell took 5%.
Yes, he did.
Who are you going to believe?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, right.
And regarding APCI, in March 2014, he said he was aware of the language, and even of today, he was saying he had never read it. So, got a problem there, too.
He said, I know about the language then, but today he said, well, I just said I never read it. The really strange part of the day came when Matt Hart put up an email from Mike Hubbard to a executive at Publix, a guy named Michael Mitchell. He said that Michael was a very close friend that he'd known for years, since 2000 or so. And he was sending him this, saying he had a constituent, he had a constituent who had a cup company, and he was wondering if he could get a meeting to sell cups to Publix. And he told Michael, he said, this would be very important to me. This would mean a lot to me. Michael Mitchell then sent an email to one of his people saying the Speaker of the Alabama House wants to meet about a cup deal, and we'd like to make that happen. So then Matt Hart says, so this is a good friend from a while ago. And he said, yeah, absolutely. He said, even the sad thing is, even though he was my friend and he was trying to help me, he just recently died of an aneurysm. Hart said, well, that's odd, because I just talked to him a couple of days ago.
And they seem fine.
He seemed fine.
Somebody asked at lunch if there was a giggle. No, everybody gasped.
Because Mike Hubbard recovered completely and said, oh, I must have been thinking about someone else. I mean, with friends like that, how do you need enemies,
What does he not know about showing up to your funeral? Really?
Yeah, my friends, I want to show up to my funeral, know I'm dead,
yeah,
and then they can talk.
Confirm it that I'm in the casket and that somebody hasn't just taken me off.
But Mike's friends, they die.
Yeah.
Nothing.
He gets them mixed up.
Yeah,
that's right. He's got a lot on his mind these days. Yeah.
He jokes a lot. He's a joker.
He does. He and Bob Riley joke all the time, and nobody knows it but them.
They're jokers.
They are really jokers.
Michael Duffy, Deputy Attorney General Michael Duffy, began the first closing argument of the day. And I'm telling you, Susan, he took them to church.
He did take them to church. What he did was he laid out everything very simply. He started with, first he went to the 1 through 4 count on the indictment, and he laid out really simply the elements of the counts, what's important, what's not important that they're saying in there, what is important that they're saying in there.
And that was really very important, because there's been a lot of things said in this hearing that are not important to the counts, to the crime. So what Duffy did is said, here's the charge, Craftmaster, here's the charge, and here's what matters, and here's what doesn't matter, and here's how we've shown you what happened. Susan?
Yes, he did. I was trying to find a good example of that here. Let me go right back in my notes. Here
Well-
we go. We've got the money that went from the ALGOP through Craftmasters, Auburn Network, through Majority Strategies to Craftmasters and How to Auburn Network. And he went over, that this was done intentionally, that this actually, what did he do is put the code
Graphic,
up first.
yeah.
He put the code up first, then he'd follow with the graphic that showed the money movement, and he'd say, what we're looking at here is personal gain. We're looking at solicitation, and then he would go on to say, okay, these are the things that do not matter. Whether the work was good, that he never got a formal ethics opinion
No, that
on this.
did matter.
That did matter. It doesn't matter that he made profit, he paid postage, he paid employees. The important part later on with the money that he raised was to get cash flow.
And the thing is, what was important is that the money traveled at his direction from the ALGOP to Craftmaster, to Majority Strategies, to Tim Howe. These are the things that mattered. Whether the product was good, whether he made any money, all those things don't matter. And he took this very succinctly, Susan.
He also, on the don't matter part of it, he said that it doesn't matter that it was private money by the ALGOP had raised for this in specific. It doesn't matter if any money was put in his pockets.
Yeah, he made it very clear on each count, and it was riveting testimony, and the jurors paid a lot of attention. It was very good. We took a break. We came back, and Lance Bell was up for the defense, and while I thought he made some good points, it was bizarre.
It was bizarre. The first thing, it sounded like he was reading you a bedtime story. He was very slow, talked really low and gently to the jury. The one thing he never said was, "It's not guilty."
Well,
that didn't come out of his mouth.
No, he didn't. But what he did that was really bizarre, and I talked to a former U.S. attorney, I talked to a former Auburn professor who have been at thousands of trials, and both said they'd never seen anybody do what Lance did. What did he do?
He went up and sat down in the witness chair and gave part of his closing from the witness chair, saying, you never saw somebody sit here in this chair and point at the defendant over there and say, I hired him because he was the speaker. And he kept on doing that. It was just really strange.
Then one of the other very strange, I don't know if it worked or not. It was I call it the Donald Trump defense. He stood up and he said, I'm afraid of what my government is doing, what this government is doing.
And he pointed to the AG's table, and there's several AGs in there today. People
and
from
he
the
said,
AG's office. And he called them the government.
The government.
That's the government
he
over
said
there.
The government is targeting this man. The government is out to get him. And then he read an email where Bob Riley said now that he was speaker, he had a bullseye on his back.
Right. Well, we all do.
But that has nothing
Here
to
in
do...
politics, you got a bullseye on your back.
That's nothing to do with the government.
No.
Then he pointed out Jim Sumner was in the court, and Jim Sumner, former ethics director, and he said, and there's the government's man. There's the government's man.
Sitting with the government.
Yeah,
as well.
sitting with the government.
He also said that all of the witnesses for that all the prosecution's witnesses were actually witnesses for them, and that the only witness that hurt them was Jim Sumner, and
Right.
he was sitting there with the government. That shows you he's the government's man.
Now,
they didn't mention he's retired.
Yeah, well, but he's the government's man.
Right.
But, he was making the same points that Baxley has made throughout the case, that these were friends, that Hubbard didn't make any money, that all these contracts were legal, that he had a right to do it. Nothing was mentioned about the law. That's the one thing we saw today. When Duffy talked, he talked about the law, and when Lance talked, he talked about the situation.
He did. It's very different. I mean, Duffy laid the law out. He said, here's what's important in what he did. Here's what's not important that they're trying to tell you is important in this case. And this is how it needs to proceed. And he went through all 23 counts. They did them in groups. But he made it very, very clear that this is what he was doing, repeatedly breaking the ethics laws over and over again.
The bee has gone now. We are out of danger.
I think that was Mike Hubbard channeling.
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
But the thing was today, you heard the difference between let's argue the law and let's argue how you can skate the law. Tomorrow, we will have the final closings in the Michael G. Hubbard criminal trial, and we may also have a verdict. For APR and the V, I'm Bill Britt.
I'm Susan Britt.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, catch up with us tomorrow. Don't miss it.